Hello again, traders, and welcome out to your currency recap. This is Songit here, and let's begin the market coverage for Tuesday, August the 8th. What an exciting day in the market. So let's get into it. In this video, we'll be going over what happened in the markets, taking a look at our currency baskets, see which one performed the best and the worst, and look at the opportunities in the next 24 hours. So let's get into it.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional Forex and crypto traders. Maverick Currencies is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional Forex and currency trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
So today's market recap, we have quite a movement, and if you take a look at intraday movement, this is where we might not see a whole lot of movement on this performance chart, but we had a nice swings, especially in some of the underperformers that did sort of make a reversal, and the outperformers did pull back. So it was a bit of a similar price action that we saw across the board in the U.S. equity markets and in the currency markets. Overall, I must say that the dollar continues to outperform. Dollar really has turned some corners in the last week or so, and we continue to see this relative strength. Remember, in the second half of this week, on a Thursday, we have the U.S. inflation numbers that are due. So ahead of that number, we are seeing quite a movement in this dollar. So we'll continue watching that, and I think this will present some good opportunities in the coming days as well. Now, the yen is actually performing a bit underperforming here. So overall, dollar yen sort of across looks good over here. So we'll be taking a look at that later in the charts. Outside of that, you can see a lot of the things are mostly sideways. But again, this is where Aussie was doing a lot more showing a lot more weakness. Kiwi was still down. And on the other hand, the euro did pull back. So some of the outperformers like euro, even Swiss franc did pull back. And reversals were across the board in growth currencies, including the Canadian dollar. So let's take a look at what happened in the other markets. As you can see, S&P is still down 0.38%. So despite that reversal, we did not rally back to the gains. So back to the green territory. So overall, markets are still under pressure. And like I said, we're getting a lot of movements ahead of this CPI number. So we're likely to see a good sort of a second half of the week, depending on what kind of number comes out. Now, we are seeing the similar price action in World Stock Index as well, so BT's down. Crypto actually had a nice day today, 1.62%. But outside of that, gold remains under pressure. Remember, gold hasn't really done much in the past few weeks and months, and now we are seeing a bit of a downward pressure in the gold. So we'll take a look at gold as well. And oil continues to be the outperformer. Oil really turned the corner in the last month, and we are just seeing new gains or new highs coming in the oil. So that's really where we are as far as our outlook goes. I mean, we were sitting at a +3. We really need to bring our outlook down to a bit of a 0 to a +1 here, because again, take a look at the chart. We are below the 20, still above the 50. So the moving averages are kind of crisscrossing here. So this is where we're still, it's a prior level of resistance, which is now the support. We're still above that level. So as long as we stay above, this is still a bit of a pullback in this pattern, but overall we're still sort of losing the momentum that we have been in for the past month or so. So interesting point where we are. We could continue to see markets go back and forth within these ranges, but we can't deny that we are not seeing the markets that we were seeing back in June and July when we were just making new highs. Now markets are a little bit under pressure. So this is where good opportunities come both ways, and exactly a good example is a day like today. But as we get the inflation numbers later this week, I think that will also be a good catalyst for markets to either break out or go back to the highs, or pull back and maybe retest the 50-day moving average. And remember, that will be the bit of a line in the sand here, this area, this prior resistance now support, and this 50-day moving average. This is what's going to hold the markets. And if it gives up this area, then we are looking at a lot more bearishness in the market. So the next coming weeks will be definitely interesting here. Now, looking at the schedule, we talked about news-wise. We have the second half this week is much better for trading. And looking at tonight, we have the CPI from China, and we also have CPI from New Zealand as well. But the bigger one is Thursday and Friday when we get the inflation numbers out of the U.S. So Next 24 hours, I'll be paying close attention to the Kiwi and the Aussie crosses because, again, CPI from China will affect the Australian dollar, and the Kiwi will also expect it will affect the Kiwi dollar as well. So again, this is a quarter over quarter number, and these usually provide good opportunities since we don't get this number on a monthly basis. This is a quarter over quarter number. So let's get into today's market analysis and see where the velocity is. And as we go in the velocity score, you can see that the cryptos are sitting at +3 on Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. But outside the cryptocurrency, a lot of the currencies are kind of right in the middle. But if you really look at this price action early in the day, Aussie was more on the -1 and Kiwi was more on the -2. Again, a lot of the scores have shifted during the day. And these reversals days are definitely tricky because then you really have to decide, should I expect a continuation of that reversal during the day, or is this reversal is a good selling opportunity? So we'll be taking a look at a lot of these currency pairs and see which way makes more sense and where we need to be. So let's take a look at possible trades ahead. So looking at the charts here, I mean, we can't deny that the Kiwi and the Aussie, they still look pretty weak. If you take a look at the Kiwi Australian dollar chart, I mean, this one thing is interesting over here is that we are finding quite a bit of sort of a hesitation for the Aussie to move lower. I mean, look at the candlesticks for the last few days. This candlesticks has been quite a bit on the size here, and look at the reversal today. We almost reversed about 0.5%. So it seems like Aussie is trying to fight going to the downside, and I've talked about how important this level is. Let's go on a monthly chart, and you'll see how important this level is. Going back to 2021, 2022, and now 2023. This is an important level of support. And if it breaks its support, there's definitely more downside coming. And these are the areas where we can see markets fighting or trying to find a bit of a short-term bottom here. So be cautious about the Aussie here, especially as we are going the next 24 hours on a bit of a risk on sort of a note instead of a risk off. But remember, we have the Aussie CPI or the China's CPI tonight, so that could affect the Australian dollar. But I will be taking a look at and see if this finds a bit of a short-term bottom. You can see that nice little rally today. We pretty much recovered all the losses we had since last night. If we pull back and maybe try to reclaim this area, this level, this red line that we have drawn over here, if we can get above that, I think there will be a good opportunity there. Same thing with the Kiwi. Kiwi, I mean, it's showing a lot more relative weakness to me here. But remember, when we get the CPI numbers, this can move. And our job is to make sure that we are responding to the price action. The last one we had was back in May. As you can see that back in May, this is where we had the last quarterly number for inflation. And we actually see a nice movement came right off of that. Actually, this was the number right here on May the 14th, right here. This was a nice little pullback for 2 days. So as we go into this number, I will be open to both downside and the upside. But I think right now I'll be more leaning towards the downside because, again, showing a lot more weakness. But remember, this is also a good level of support. And this is where we could see a bit of a shorter term rally or a shorter term bottom. So you really have to decide how long my trades are for. And if I'm going for any of these reversal trades, if they are short lived, if they are for next 24 hours, I'm okay with that. I'm okay to buy that. I don't want to hold anything at this point thinking, oh, it should rally on a daily chart. I mean, daily chart is still pointing out to the downside. Australian dollar is the only one that's sort of fighting over here. But overall, you can see the trend is to the downside. Now, let's talk about the outperformers. The US dollar. You can see that US dollar has made a very nice rally off from the bottom back in July. I mean, we are back at the levels where we were just a month ago. So overall, this thing hasn't really gone anywhere, but there's a lot of range that we're dealing with here. So if we just draw this chart over here, you can see that we're getting up upward towards that resistance area. So the inflation numbers could change things. We can either find a bit of a breakout above this level, or maybe this is where we see a shorter a reversal taking place, just like what we have seen back in March, we saw back in June, and we can potentially get back to this level here. So these are the areas important to watch. But if you look at 4-hour chart, we are still moving higher. I mean, the momentum has been higher, so we haven't really started making lower high and lower lows. That's how you know how strong and weak the trend is. Right now, we're still making a higher low with a higher high, maybe another higher low, and maybe it will try to go higher. So we haven't really given up that momentum. Personally speaking, I'd rather look for a dollar on Thursday off the CPI numbers I think that's really where my focus will be. But for now, I think we could see a bit of a consolidation or a shorter term pullback. You can see that on an hourly chart. It was doing really well this morning. It broke out and boom, it just pulled back here. But overall, it really hasn't changed anything today. It's just a bull pullback. We're still holding on to most of the gains, and the trend line really hasn't broken yet. The Japanese yen, this thing has sort of started to weaken here a little bit. The daily chart is interesting over here because we did pull back, start to gain a little bit here, but right now we're making a bit of a lower high. So I think I like the yen over here a bit more on the downside. And let's talk about European currencies. Remember, these currencies have done really well, and here we are. We're getting a bit of a big sort of a shadow on these candles on the Swiss franc. I find that interesting here. But overall, you can see this thing, it did break higher, pull back, so now prior resistance is now the support. If we give up this level, I think we could see maybe further continuation. But I mean, Swiss franc is one of the currencies that I really haven't really loved it. On the short side, we get a lot of back and forth. It's not really consistent. But overall, it has been much better play on the upside than it is to the downside. Now, the euro, I must say, euro is sort of pulling back right off that resistance area. I mean, let's go back in time. This is a 4-hour chart. You can see that back in May, we peaked around April and May, we peaked around this level. And that's exactly where we are. So is this a bull pullback or is this a sort of a reversal area? So remember, this is still trending higher. If I just draw the lines here, this is still trending higher. I would love to see if this is a trend changing move, then I would need to see a lower high. So maybe a rally a little bit and then roll over. Now that's where you get the momentum shift. So this is still a bull pullback to me, but we can't deny that we did sort of pull back down to this area. And yeah, overall, we did made a bit of a double top here. So we'll see where it goes. I think euro and Swiss franc both are on my radar here. Especially, I'm kind of doubting the continuation here. The British pound, on the other hand, is kind of holding in here, but at the same time, this thing is not really. I mean, this thing is we're getting back to this resistance area, so we'll see where it goes. I don't really love it here. If it breaks out higher, I'll definitely want to get behind it. Now let's talk about other currencies. So Canadian dollar had a nice little reversal today, but remember we talk about how Canadian dollar is mostly tied to what the US dollar does, and in between we get this sort of a negative correlation. So taking a look at right now, CAD is getting a bit of a pop here, but I don't really love the CAD long here, especially if the dollar is pulling back. I think the better play for a continuation would be Aussie or maybe the Kiwi. But remember, 4-hour charts will tell you, well, don't go long here. I mean, Kiwi is not showing any long sign here. If I have to make a play, I think those will be around on these events, and that goes down to the China CPI number tonight and the Kiwi CPI number tonight. In that case, we can look at Aussie and Kiwi on the upside. We can pair that perhaps against the yen. So let's take a look at Aussie against the yen. You can see it's still trying to recover a little bit here. We got a bit of a resistance here. So it's all about getting the currency right. If I know, or if the price action in the Aussie is going to be recovering overnight, then we just have to make sure we pair up against the right currency. Euro Aussie. I mean, euro is pulling back, and you can see on a daily chart, it did break out and sort of peaking a little bit. I mean, this is a bit of a reversal sign to me. So I can maybe take a look at Euro Aussie short, but again, this is a shorter term trade. Maybe look to sort of pull back towards that 166 area. So you just really have to define your timeline on that trade and not really overextend that time, because again, there could be a good short term pullback and risk to reward ratio looks good on those trades. But I just have to be exiting those trades once that momentum is over. So those are the ones that I'm really watching. Also pay close attention to Aussie Kiwi tonight, since we have the inflation numbers coming, and that odds affecting both the Aussie and the Kiwi. Shorter term, you can see the Aussie is showing relative strength against the Kiwi. So this is why I like Kiwi Aussie long a little bit better than the Kiwi long here. But if this is going to continue to the upside, then maybe we'll perhaps take a look at Aussie Kiwi or some of the other Aussie crosses as well. Let's take a look at the Aussie Swiss franc. So again, this one doesn't look that the best here. But yeah, you can see that how Aussie has been underperforming against its major counterparts. So perhaps we can take a look at Euro Aussie. Is the only one that I find interesting here. Making a bit of a shorter term top here. So That's the one I'll be paying attention to. If the Aussie stays or gets weaker on the news, then perhaps we can continue taking a look at Aussie against the US dollar. Has been a great trade, but you can see it's just finding some support here. So we'll see if there's a good event, good sort of price action off those news. If not, I still think Thursday would be the best day to trade off the CPI numbers from the US, and that will probably continue into Friday. So far, it's been a great environment. The next couple of days could be choppy. Just watch out and make sure you're keeping the powder dry. So when the real events happen, you're not shying away because you already have blown off your risk. And if you already had a great week so far, then this is a great time to sort of hold on to your gains and use those gains to leverage yourself for this Thursday event. So my again focus will be on the China and the Kiwi CPI numbers, but outside of that, I'm more likely to be active on Thursday off the CPI numbers. Till then, take care. Happy trading.